Hitchhiker's Nightmare, my personal true story, Hitchhiker's Nightmare. To understand the magnitude of my story, you must know who I am, so, here's a little backstory. I was born in 1954, so my formidable years were spent growing up under the influence of the 60s and early 70s, in a very small town in upstate Ohio. When I say small, I mean one light at Broadway and Main. There were about 40 businesses in the center of town. The drugstore soda shop was right on one of those corners. There was also the hardware store, small grocery store, Ben Franklin's, gas station, barbershop. We had Baptist, Methodist, Lutheran and Catholic churches, and most everyone went to one of them weekly. You get the picture. It was Mayberry. We also had a library, a post office, and the jail. The jail was set up so you could easily sneak right past the cop desk 9 times out of 10 to go see if anyone was in jail. If there was, we would run errands for them, go get cigarettes, whatever. We never bothered to ask, "What are you in for?" Kids. I was a curious, free-spirited, and completely wild and innocent child. A little bit later came the assassination of JFK, the civil rights movement, the Vietnam protests, and the hippie revolution, which I joined in becoming one of the earliest hippies. So, maybe you can now guess where this story is leading. Hitchhiking was commonplace in those years, so I did it a lot. For a little over 3 years I made many trips all over the US and Canada, much to the dismay of my mother. Sometimes I took friends, sometimes I went alone, always with no money, no clothes, and no worries. So many people tried to warn me of the dangers, but being very young and naive, and feeling quite invincible, I ignored all of their well-meaning advice. This was not my first trip, nor was it the last, but it is the most memorable, and you will now understand the gravity of the very close call that it was. June 1969, I was 14. I was spending the night with my friend, Dina, who lived in a neighboring mirrored town. I talked her into coming with me to San Francisco. She just happened to have a brother living out there that she had not seen in a while. So we headed out across the cow pasture to the highway and stuck out our thumbs. It never took long to get a ride, as you can probably imagine. We received many rides. A band tour bus picked us up on their way to a gig in Chicago, but we did not want to make that big of a detour, so we passed. I cannot remember who the band was. I remember another ride when we got into a convertible Cadillac with 4 black men and went to a party in Blacktown, Columbus, Ohio. We were the only white people at this party, and let me tell you, we had a blast. I never felt unwanted or in danger. In fact, the nice lady that lived in that apartment gave me a shirt which I thought was so kind. Now, as an adult, I realize she was trying to cover me up. God bless her. The next ride was pretty cool until he picked up another hitchhike, a lone guy, who kept nagging him about how much trouble he was going to be in if he got caught taking these 2 underage girls across state lines. I became very agitated and told him to shut up. We should have gotten out right then and there, but we stayed. He was not dangerous, just annoying. Well, the driver stopped for gas in Iowa, and Dina and I went into the restroom to freshen up. When we came out, the cops were waiting for us and we ended up in the Iowa City jail. I'm sure our parents were contacted immediately, although I do not recall this. We were quite the attraction in this little jail. The cops would come up and talk to us and play cards. They would bring us cigarettes, candy, and donuts, another Mayberry. I do not think we were there for too long before Dina's mom had driven out to pick us up, and after a conversation with her daughter, she decided to drive us the rest of the way to California. That's just over 1,900 miles, unbelievable. I remember singing to the radio all the way to Nevada. I especially remember the mamas and the papas, "Are you going to San Francisco?" Later we booked into a hotel in Reno. Boring. This is not what I signed up for. I tried to talk Dina into just taking off. I realize now, as an adult, what a terrible selfish act that would have been, and how devastating that would have been to her mom. Lucky for everyone, she refused to do that, so I stayed. We finally ended up in San Francisco, right at Hyde and Ashbury near Berkeley College, where all the hippie action was, with her mom tagging along. It was also overwhelming to me. I was pretty cool for our little town, but this stuff is way out of my league. I did mention how very naive I was. I was not fully aware of things like drug addiction, but I was at first hand at Needle Park. Seeing everyone strung out on drugs scared me to death. I saw other things too that I cannot mention. Needless to say, I was shocked. I wanted to go home, and I have never wanted to go back to California again, and have never been back even to this day. I do not remember how many weeks I was gone on that particular adventure, but shortly thereafter, I was home watching TV with my mom. It was July, and it was all over the news about the Manson family and the infamous murders. I then realized how close I had come to being picked up by them and possibly becoming one of the family. What if I would have taken off on my own looking for adventure and had not stayed with Dina and her mom that night? Hitchhiking alone through the desert, 9 hours away from Spawn Ranch? What if that guy had not turned us into the cops in Iowa, and we would have been out there, the two of us? Most assuredly I or both of us would have gotten picked up by one of them. Later I found out that the family were recruiting Popel from Haight-Ashbury, and also how irked I was because we could not lose her mom. Every day I'm thankful that I did not get caught up in that. I was sure ripe for the picking, especially if they would have gotten a hold of me before I made it all the way to California. In all my adventures, I was never beat up, raped or murdered. I really do believe that I was under divine protection. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button to support my work. And as always, enjoy the fear, my dear.